A lot of what I'm going to talk about today, just keep that in mind. That's what I'm here to explain to you guys. After 22 years in the classroom and a single year as an administrator, I've only been in this position since June of last year. Almost all of my thoughts and feelings are still pretty teacher-centered. So sometimes I forget that I'm an administrator, but as I'm going through these things, understand that these views are entirely my own. This is not anyone from MPS administration telling you these things. I still really have a teacher perspective on all of this. Some of the details that I'm going to share with you are pretty stark. So the way that things used to be, it wasn't great. But I just want to make sure that we're always talking about the fact that I'm really proud to serve the children and the families of Milwaukee Public Schools and of the city of Milwaukee, and that everything we're going to be discussing is all about growth and about forward momentum. So some of the details are not pretty, but we're always going to be thinking about how we're moving and growing, and that's the perspective I want to come at this for. So have you in your classes, and just a thumbs up again in the screen, have you talked a little bit about education funding and about how the politics of that sort of stuff works? A little bit? Okay. So this is kind of the quick and dirty version of where we were, and we call it in the bad old days. So around 2011, Act 10 passed, and there were some very dramatic changes in education funding. There had been a decline in education funding before that, so it wasn't, like it was the only reason why these things were happening, but it certainly was a factor. And then around the same time in Milwaukee Public Schools, funding was decentralized. And so schools took charge of their own budgets, and they had principals had kind of autonomy to decide what their programs would look like. School funding is determined by enrollment. And enrollment comes from a number of factors, but there's a school report card that's published by the state, and principals were under a lot of pressure to make their school report card look as wonderful as it possibly could. So if it came, and those report cards primarily are math, reading, those kind of subjects. So if it came down to a decision between, am I going to keep my full-time reading interventionist? Am I going to keep my full-time music teacher? They were in a really hard place. They were being pressured to really make sure that those reading and math scores were going up. And even though many of them loved music and wanted to keep it as a part of what they were offering, it really was not possible to do that. And they were permitted to cut their positions to 0.2. So that would mean a 0.2 position if you're getting a job is 1 day a week at a particular school. So if you wanted to have a full-time job in Milwaukee Public Schools, you would have to go to 5 different schools, a different school every day of the week. Only one brave individual did that. He did it for an entire year, and he has since gotten a full-time job, so he's not doing that anymore. But that was very difficult. It was very hard to staff 0.2 positions in public schools. It was just a really challenging thing to ask young teachers, especially here. You're going to have like 2,000 students. You got to go someplace different every day. It was really, really hard to get those positions filled. And so you can imagine a lot of them didn't get filled. And what that left us with in MPS was what we call the music desert. There was a whole swath in the central city and on the north side of Milwaukee that simply had no music instruction. It was something like 26,000 students that just didn't have a music teacher in front of them because it wasn't part of the budget, and it was really hard to find somebody to go to those places 1 day a week. So fast forward maybe, so 2011 is when Act 10 happened. 2015, a group of kind of the crabby, pushy high school band directors got together and were like, hey, there's no more high school band because there's no middle school bands, because there's no elementary general music. It was like, it was becoming an issue. So we talked our way into a meeting with the then superintendent and started proposing things that we thought might be a solution for this problem. And everybody loved our idea. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Let's do that. And then absolutely nothing happened. So that was 2015. And then in 2018, the superintendency of Milwaukee Public Schools switched. So there's a new superintendent in place. A number of the members of the Milwaukee Public School Board switched. So there's lots of new people on the school board. And we realized, like the 4 crabby band directors, we're not gonna be able to get any of the things that we need done without some additional help. So we formed something called the Milwaukee Music Educators Association with about 25 of our closest music teacher friends. And then under the auspices of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, the teachers union, we started to formulate this idea that if we wanted to get music in front of these 26,000 kids that were missing it right now, we needed a policy in place to make that happen. It wasn't going to be, we couldn't talk to enough principals to convince them to spend this money. We needed the board to adopt something that would make it so this is what they needed to do. So all of those things started to go into motion, and then the policy was created with a really wonderful team of people and presented to the board in November of 2019, and it was at that time adopted. If you're interested in reading, policy 7.44, I would be happy to share that with you. It's a public document, but I can share it with you because it's kind of hard to find on the website. And what policy 7.44 does, it brings a full-time music teacher to every child in the Milwaukee Public Schools over the course of the next 5 years. So it's a gradual rollout and a gradual increase. In the same kind of time frame, so the policy passed in November 2019, then the very good people of the city of Milwaukee passed a referendum essentially to help us to fund this policy. Obviously, the referendum funds other things as well, but part of why the referendum passed, at least in my mind, is that the people of the city of Milwaukee want their kids to have art and music. They want these good things to be in the classrooms. And so they ponied up and they were able to pass this referendum to help us to fund the things that we're working towards now in the district. So some of the things that Milwaukee Public Schools is able to offer, we do have 2 full-time music support teachers. So 2 teachers who come out of the classroom and work out of this office to go out into schools to help support new teachers. There's my position as the music curriculum specialist. And then in the Office of Fine Arts, we have a whole other team of people who are doing the same thing for visual art. We also have an arts integration specialist whose job it is to work with schools, work with principals, work with school teams to help them to integrate the arts into their regular education programs. And we have a couple of really wonderful grants that my supervisor was able to get. One was a private grant and one is from the Department of Education that kind of support and fund bits and pieces of all of that stuff that we're able to offer. I'm going to share a map with you. So just so you understand, so 26,000 kids. The Milwaukee Public Schools has had between 70 and 75,000 students for the last few years. And the district itself has 158 schools. So before the music policy, there were full-time teachers in only 32 schools. And there were only 5 schools that had more than 1 music teacher. Can you, again, thumbs up in the chat if you are in the screen here, if you went to a high school that had more than 1 teacher, show me your thumbs up, more than 1 music teacher. Okay, so it's pretty common, right? Like a school generally would have maybe a band and an orchestra or choir, or 2 of those 3 things. But we weren't in a situation where we were offering that in Milwaukee Public Schools. And we want to be. I think that the children in the city are going to be able to do just as many things as the children all over the place. Let me figure out how I can share this here. So I want to share that. There it is. So this is a map of the city of Milwaukee. Tell me thumbs up again if you can see what I'm showing you. All right, so the little black music notes, those are schools that had full-time music instruction prior to the implementation of the policy. The little gray music notes, those are MPS schools that had part-time music instruction, so something. And then the whole center of the city is pretty empty. There's not a whole lot in there. So year 1 of our music expansion policy looks like this. We have 23 new teachers serving 29 new schools. Most of the jobs are full-time. Some of the jobs are paired positions, 0.5 in one school, 0.5 in another school, so that you're serving only 2 schools. So that's what year 1 looked like. We filled in a little bit in the center city. We got a little bit on the south side. We got quite a bit on the north side because there was a gap over there. And then what we're going to be able to do next year for year 2 of our expansion is we are offering 22 new positions serving 27 schools, kind of the same combination. Most of the positions are full-time in a single school. Some are shared for the very small schools, 0.5 and 0.5. So this is what it looks like for year 2 for us. So, and there is a year 3 and a year 4 that will happen as well. That will take care of filling in all of the rest of those gaps to the point where by year 5, every Milwaukee Public School, all 158 of them, will have some kind of music instruction worthy of the kids that are at that school. Let's see, I'm going to tell you a couple other things and then we'll take some questions about that. So I'm going to share my presentation just here for a couple of minutes. So we are able to, at this point in MPS, have, because we're fully digital, so our whole district right now, all the teachers are, teaching. So many of them are teaching from their classrooms in their schools, and some of them are teaching from home in their own situation. Okay, does that look right? Oh, hold on here. Now you see it? Okay. So one of the things that we started at the very beginning of this school year, because we knew we were going to be fully virtual, is that we opened up all of the different kinds of digital platforms that are available. So we had adopted, before I got this position, a music curriculum called Quaver, which is very interactive and has a lot of things that can be done on a computer and on a screen. About 60 teachers in our district, something like 18,000 students have access to Quaver. It has a K-8 curriculum. It's primarily used in K-5. There are a few schools that are using it 6 through 8. We also have smart music available for our teachers who are fully digital. About 15 people, about 900 students are using that platform. And then we offer Music First. More teachers and more students are using Music First. It has 5 interconnected digital resources. It has composition, it has Soundtrap. It's a really wonderful tool. So our teachers are able to have access to the kind of digital resources they needed over the course of this year. They'll still have access to them if we do come back full time in the fall. And we have a contract that extends into that following 22-23 school year as well with those digital platforms. What else do I want to tell you about this? Oh, so this is, you guys probably seen this meme before, the government funded classroom versus the teacher funded classroom. We're not doing that in MPS right now. We're very, very fortunate that the referendum has allowed us to really customize, particularly for our K-8 teachers, because I think general music is so individual and unique to the person that's doing it that they need really specific things. So we've been able to do that. Do you want a set of Orff instruments? Would you like to have, I don't know, recorders and ukuleles? We've been very lucky, along with, in my office, we have an instrument specialist who, this is her job. She researches and finds these things and brings them to the school and sets them up if that's what needs to be done. We're able to do that for all of our new teachers that are coming in, and there is also a provision in the referendum for existing schools. So if there's things that have needed to be done for a long time or people are waiting for, those things are also available to existing teachers that have been in the system a while. And then I'm going to stop talking and see if you have any questions. How do I stop sharing? There we go, so I can see people again.
So let me start and just ask, so the referendum is getting all of this started. What will it take to be able to sustain this past?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I feel like that's a question for the people that are upstairs from me in this building, probably. I don't know that they're going to ask me to be part of that process. I almost feel like a second referendum is probably in our future. I think this one passed more easily than anyone thought that it would, and has had an incredible impact. Like all those, we're hiring 54 new teachers over the next 2 years. The 26,000 students that did not have music instruction, they all have a teacher now. That entire deficit has been erased. And it was going to happen anyway. The policy passed by the board before the referendum passed. But now that the referendum has passed, it's just that much more stable for us to be able to continue to grow those programs.
So if anybody else has questions, just go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
I have a question. These digital programs that you mentioned, Quaver, Smart Music, Music First, is the expectation that teachers already know how to use it when they come to your school, or
No.
are there training programs?
There will be training programs for certain. So I mean, none of our teachers knew how to use that when we went fully virtual in the fall. We just had never had access to those things before. So the companies themselves are really terrific about providing PD. We did it all virtually, of course, in the past, and they have many resources and YouTube videos, and they were really great about helping teachers to kind of scaffold using parts of that as they could. And then I'm hopeful if things are relatively back to normal in the fall, that we can bring those groups, those companies here and have in-person professional development, because the first year teachers didn't get to have that at all. And then there'll be a whole new crop of teachers that are going to want to use these programs that will need something to train them to do it.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
David, did you have a question with the hand raise?
Oh no, I was raising my hand just to like interact with you guys. But I do have a question, and I'll ask it later.
Okay.
Zach, did you have something or no?
I'm trying to formulate one.
Okay, I'll ask one of my questions then.
Right.
So I did not come from an urban background. I came from like a suburban background. I'm from Franklin.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, when you're teaching in an urban school and your background is very different from the students that you're teaching, how do you kind of like relate to them and their experiences?
That's a terrific question. So you read my little bio there at the beginning. I came from Canada and I play the oboe. So I just dropped in, and my first job in Milwaukee Public Schools was at Custer High School. Like, I didn't know anything about anything when I dropped into Custer High School. I came into music education non-traditionally. I got a master's in band conducting, and then I did finish my certification at UWM on the job, which I don't recommend, but that is the way that you're allowed to do it. And I didn't know anything about what I was doing. I didn't know anything about the kinds of kids I'd be working with. I mean, I had never known any Black and brown people coming from small town central Alberta. And it didn't matter at all. If I'm being completely honest, it was nothing. The kids that I worked with then, and that I worked with even as recently as last year, it's that old thing about they don't care until they know how much you care. It's that kind of thing. They knew that I loved them and that I loved music, and I wanted to put those two things together. And it was really just that simple. Not that it's easy, because you're dealing with a lot of things that I didn't grow up, in the kind of traumatic and poverty situations and the kind of things that our students are definitely coming from. They definitely have those things as a part of who they are, but it's not everything that they are. It's so not. And the whole like love for music and and then I had an opportunity to work with high school students while I was at UWM with the Youth Wind Ensemble. And I loved everything about it. And I knew that I was going to change my path and go and do that. And just taking that leap and taking a chance was the best thing that I ever did for myself and for my family. I think that there's a lot of, maybe trepidation about urban education and how am I going to relate to these students. I don't think that's a thing that you really need to worry about. I think if your passion is up front and your love of music is out there, you're going to be able to communicate.
What is one of the most rewarding things that you've been able to do with your students at Milwaukee High School of the Arts?
Oof. Well, we did lots of travel and touring, and I was always so proud to take these kids from Milwaukee all over the place, and they represented the city and our district and their families exceptionally well. Both musically and personally, they're just so friendly and outgoing and open, and where they were outstanding ambassadors for this district, and I was always proud to take them out into the world. Currently, one of the things that I'm the most proud about is that 2 of the students that went through my program at Milwaukee High School of the Arts are now Milwaukee Public Schools teachers. I'm incredibly proud of how hard they worked all through college and all through everything else that they've been doing, and now they're back in this district, giving back to the place that nourished and nurtured them.
I have a question for you guys. Kind of piggyback of what Lauren's question was. Like I come from a Hispanic family, so I see a lot of the things of like, oh, you sure you want to do music and stuff. So I was wondering how, with music not being taught as much in MPS, how are the kids taking it now that it's being implemented more often?
That's an excellent question, because that was something that I know a lot of people are like, wow, how are you going to fit this into what we're doing in our school? We haven't had it for such a long time. And I feel like the response has been overwhelmingly positive. And I think a lot of that has to do with the teachers. Like those people got into a classroom and made it fun and made it engaging and did the things that they needed to do to bring children like a little bit of joy. It's been really hard to do this virtually and digitally. And I think part of it is that, like the personality of the person that's in front of the kids is a large factor in kind of the buy-in that's going to happen at the schools. I have a feeling that will be much better when we're back in person and we can have a winter concert and families can come into the building and see how, what the value add to their school is as far as a music culture is concerned. That's one of the things that I have teachers that I mentor that I talk to them about, is building that culture in their school is going to be kind of a slow burn. You're not going to be able to just flip a switch and have everybody on the music train. You're going to have to do some things that are like outreach oriented and culture building, and all of those things have to happen as a part of the process of rebuilding, bringing music into the schools. Does that answer your question? I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Can I go? Is that okay? Okay. So I personally, I'm not an MPS student. My mom taught at MPS. She taught at Brown Street Academy for about 9 years. And her thing, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but her thing was always like, when she was a young teacher, she didn't really know how to get like the parents involved in like understanding what their students were doing in school. So, and obviously she taught at MPS a long time ago, so the climate has changed. But how would you say like you get like the parents involved in their students learning?
Well, it's a little more challenging in high school than I suspect it would be in a younger, a K-5 or a K-8 school where the parents have to bring the kid there, and there's a little more involvement just kind of naturally like that. In this district, every school has a parent coordinator, so an individual who is not in the classroom, but whose entire job it is to foster those kinds of relationships and build parent engagement in the community of the school. So as a music teacher, it would be important to work closely with that person and really try to help them to understand what things music can bring that are also going to bring parents into the building. Sometimes, so there's a theory going around that the music teachers were the first cut because their stuff, was only one night a week and it wasn't as visible, versus an art teacher could, paper the entire school with all kinds of cool stuff that parents would want to look at. But I would push back on that and say that what you're doing in music class, even though the performance thereof is only once or twice a year, you're building and adding something to those kids' everyday lives that they feel. So you're also going to be in a situation where you're enlisting your students to go home and tell their parents, look at this cool thing that I did in music class today. Like you have to kind of leverage all the points of contact that you would have. There's a lot of phone calls that go on, right? Like I put in a lot of time making parent phone calls. And as a new and a young teacher, you simply have to do that. There's nothing as exciting as calling someone's family and having them go, what do you do now? And being able to say, well, you know what? He did something really awesome today. It just sort of opens the door for people to think about your subject area and to care about your subject area and to understand that you care about their kid. I don't know, those are some of the tools at your disposal in terms of getting parent involvement.
Awesome, thank you.
What are some of the ways that you've been able to help students that may have a financial need that aren't able to provide instruments or rent instruments or what have you?
Well, so over the course of this year in MPS, we gave the COVID discount. So every student that needed an instrument was able to get one for no fee. We were also able this year just to provide books and materials and all kinds of things at no cost to students and families. Going into the next school year, that's a building-based decision. So some of the schools do charge an amount for their instruments. However, every music teacher in this district is aware that if a child is unable to pay, that is never going to be a barrier to them having an instrument in their hands. We will make sure that we provide something for them to play. In 2017, so the previous superintendent, this district invested $2.1 million into a new fleet of instruments. So we were looking at string, wind, brass, and percussion instruments that were 40, 50, 60 years old that were still functional, but not really worthy of the great kids that were playing them. And it's so difficult to repair things that are that old, and it wasn't right. So they invested the money in this new instrument fleet, and that's what we're working with right now. So most of our students have an instrument that's 5 years old in their hands, and it's been well maintained, and it was well made to begin with. We do have, as I said, an instrument specialist that is responsible for helping to maintain our inventory, delivering. We do some of the maintenance ourselves. Our district recently purchased an ultrasonic cleaner, which is like a fancy way to clean brass instruments. And so we're thinking about ways to preserve the fleet of instruments that we have so that we can then afford to give them to kids without making that be a barrier to, their learning. Another thing that happens very frequently is people reach out to us with scholarships and with things that they want to donate. Since I've been in this office, I've received donation of, I want to say, between 15 and 20 really nice musical instruments that we were able to just turn around and put into a kid's hands who needed it. People don't give us cash quite as often. That's okay. We're happy to have the instruments and the things like that. We also are the recipient of a number of scholarship opportunities in terms of private lessons and just kind of being the largest district in the state, people kind of reach out and say, what can we do for you? What do you need? So, and that's kind of the framework. And if there are children that need something, that's always the first thing is, oh, we have this as a need. and we can turn that right back around and get it into kids' hands.
Thank you.
You mentioned the teacher organization that you and fellow band directors made. Is that still active now that the referendum was passed? And what do you do now that you have that referendum?
Well, they call me all the time now, right? I used to be part of their membership, but now they're calling me looking for stuff. So they have a monthly meeting with their membership, which is, like I said, there were 39 music teachers working full-time in this district just only about 4 years ago. By next year, we'll have 125 music teachers working full-time in this district. So potentially, the Milwaukee Music Educators Association could have 125 members. Not all of the teachers in this district are active in that group, but many are. I'd say it's upwards of 50 that are participating just kind of in what their operations are like. So they are definitely still active. So now that I'm on the dark side of the administration, I can't talk about the union anymore, but they're tied to the union. So they have like a maybe a more direct line to upper administration even than I would have from the position that I'm in, kind of as the lowest level of district administration. We have there's just a chain of command that I follow that the Music Educators Association does not follow. So we are working together. We really try to keep things very transparent and very open. And these are all people that I've known and loved and worked with for 20 years. So we have, we fight, but we really do try to get along, and everybody, all concerned, all parties concerned, it's about what's best for kids.
I have a question. So I'm actually a theater education major, but something that I'm also talking about in my classes is arts integration and how to write an arts integrated lesson. And I know you had mentioned that one position about implementing arts integration into schools. What has been MPS's history with arts integration? Is it more at least one school will have it, or is it kind of an outreach, some teachers going out into schools and like you said, helping principals or administrative implement these kinds of lessons?
It's actually both of those things. So as a district in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction this year, our sort of overarching principle was multidisciplinary integration as a general philosophy. It hasn't been approved yet, but I believe we'll also follow that next year. We're going to have a 2 or 3 year plan for that being kind of an overarching principle. The individuals that are arts integration specialists in this department do just what you said. They go out into particular schools. So one of the grants that we have is tied to 9 different schools. And so their primary objective is to work with those 9 schools that are part of the grant initiative, but they'll work with anybody that wants to know a little bit more about arts integration. They do whole school coaching. They do coaching to the SSTs, who are the teacher leaders within the buildings. And they do individual classroom coaching as well. So they, if there's a teacher that really wants to put something into practice and they have a need for someone to help them to learn how to do that, that's something that our arts integration specialists will be responsible for.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions from other folks?
What's your biggest hope going into this fall if things can reopen? What's kind of that overarching hope that will happen?
I hope that we can capitalize on the momentum that we gained this year. I think there were so many people that were worried about how virtual learning would work, at least in terms of a music classroom, because it was completely untested for our people, and they rocked it. They amazed me on a daily basis with how creative they were. All of the incredibly the backbreaking amount of work that they had to put into putting things together so that their students could still keep moving and keep learning and keep making music. I don't anticipate that's going to be difficult, and there'll be many things when we go back into the classroom in real life where that'll just be oh, good, we don't have to do it like that anymore. But I'm very hopeful that all of these new people who are going to roll up to their schools in August and September of next year, having never really been in there with kids, are going to be able to really capitalize on the momentum and make the best of what should be simpler, I think, when they get back into the classroom.
are most of the new school positions able to provide a classroom for music instruction, or are there places where that person is having to travel room to room in order to provide service?
It's a little bit of all of that. Obviously, we're working with principals to develop, you need to have a music classroom. But I mean, some of these places, some of these buildings they have 800 students and they were built for 650. Like there's some other issues like that at play. So, I mean, our first thing is give this teacher a music classroom. Here's all the great stuff we're going to buy you to fill it. Like that's something that we kind of have as a leverage point. We do have teachers in a situation where they're on a cart where there just simply is not, the building is bursting and there's not a space for them to go. So, but I would say that's probably the minority of what we're working with. One of the options that's becoming available is any auditorium space that's in the building. That is sometimes where the music classroom works best. And then obviously there's some additional equipment considerations and, amplification needs and things like that. So those are part of how the referendum funding might help music to really take up space in a building. There are some terrific jobs that I think are still open in buildings that have amazing music rooms. Like, I don't know if that was maybe not a top consideration for some of the people that were applying that, but there are still some really, really pretty well-appointed facilities that are looking for a teacher for the fall. So that's out there.
So the student teachers asked last night, when I met with them, when to start applying for positions, because they knew that the new positions in MPS had been posted. So are people that are still, finishing up the second half of their student teaching, should they be reaching out to apply?
They should be. So that first round was for teachers who were already in the system or who were fully certified. And then the second round that will open on April 1st is for anyone who's got a degree, you can apply.
Okay.
So any teacher that's finishing their student teaching right now is certainly qualified to apply in that second round. I won't know until next week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, which positions are still open. As I said, there was 22 of them, and there will definitely be some that are still available, but it won't be 22 in this next round. Quite a few of them did get filled. We had many, many applicants, including some great applicants from UWM. So that's the stage that process is at.
Good.
Just a question about that. For those of us who are still in school and wouldn't be applying for jobs maybe this year, sounds like over the next couple of years, all the positions that you're offering, chances are good that we can apply. What could we do now that will help us prepare and be ready to work in urban schools?
Observe, ask to go into these places and be there with the kids and see what it's like. I didn't do that. I just dropped myself into Custer High School on the first day and hit the ground running, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend definitely going to see every possible situation. Go to see a kindergarten teacher in a public school. So you can get yourself into a high school band and see what that looks like. But like being in the space and kind of absorbing the culture and the climate of the school is a really good way to get yourself ready to be doing it yourself. And then I don't know what the process for student teaching is like. I know it's extra complicated and cumbersome, but try to get yourself into a public school to student teach. Maybe you don't do your whole placement there, but come to MPS and see what there is. Meet the terrific teachers that are already working here that are just killing it every day, and sort of see the system from the inside, I think is my best advice to you, particularly if you did not grow up here and if your experience is largely suburban or rural or something like that. Come and see what goes on in these buildings. I really think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
We do have things structured so that the elementary general music, I work with River West Elementary School, so we're in several classrooms there to be working with, and we are trying for a number of our field placement things. And then as we get more new teachers into MPS as well, we'll have more possibility for placements as well that we can use for student teaching. It's a little complicated, but it's getting a little bit easier as we know more and more of the people that are there. So I am very open to looking at those placements, and I think as I work with Ms. Garcia to know who's available and who's really good and got programs up and running, we'll have some good placements that are available to people.
So I'll be working with the people in human resources at Milwaukee Public Schools who make those placements. There's literally a 4-page document they sent me on how to do this. So I will get the ball rolling because I think there's only a few people on that list right now. It has to be vetted by a number of different sources. I can't just say where you could go. It has to go up the chain a little bit, but there's definitely a lot of people that are not even on that list that I think would be great people for you to observe. So I have plans to get that process started in the next couple of weeks. So there'll be some good placements available come the fall and next spring.
For those of us that are going into student teaching next semester, do you have any like recommendations of places that you think would be a good idea to go to?
Yes, but I think Dr. Faye Shaw gets to say whether you're going to take my recommendations or not. What's your area, Luke? What do you do?
Instrumental general.
Instrumental general. Okay, yeah, I got some great people that you would be lucky to learn from. But I mean, mix it up a little bit, right? You want to try to see, where did you grow up? Did you go to school locally or you're from somewhere else?
I'm from Stevens Point.
Stevens Point. Okay. Yeah, you're gonna want to step into some of these schools and see what it's really like and experience that. But I think there could be some really wonderful placements in MPS if that's really something that you're interested in. Obviously, it's not the only way to do it, right? I jumped in from somewhere else and just became an urban public school teacher without any prior knowledge or understanding, but there are definitely better ways to do it than that.
Okay, I kind of have like a 2-part question. The first one with, like, I come from also a suburban district, and our high schools and our middle and elementary schools were 2 separate districts. So how have you found the coherence to be between having all your schools in one district versus having them in separate districts?
Ooh, that's like a 20-part question. So, and I've only been in this position since June. So what I'm speaking to is what I found when I got here, which is not how it will be a few years from now. Right now, there's a lot of everybody doing their own thing, which I don't think is right for any school district, but certainly in a large urban school district with quite a considerable amount of mobility, that is not going to work for us. We need there to be some kind of an understanding that when you go from this school to that school, you're going to be getting into the same thing when you get there. So we're building those processes right now, building a new scope and sequence for our K-5 general music educators at this moment, working towards getting 6 to 8 done over the summer. Not really touching high school right now. They've kind of got their own thing going on, and we'll work towards doing that probably in the next school year. So it's coming, it's building, it's kind of an awareness issue, and will be part of my largest responsibility. Once I'm not helping teachers navigate a pandemic, then I'll be working towards doing exactly what you said, making sure that everything is aligned from bottom to top, and that the options are as myriad as we can possibly allow. Something that we're definitely looking more aggressively into in Milwaukee Public Schools is cultural relevance and making things as diverse as our student body and as our teachers. So that's something that is an ongoing addition to what we're able to offer in this district.
And then kind of the second part, what are you kind of hoping to see out of that integration and that kind of thing? Like, what you are kind of hoping over the next couple of years students will really be able to have and like grow into?
What does it look like? Well, there's a lot of talk about like the heyday of MPS. Oh, in the 70s we had this, in the 80s we had this. Like, I do not want to talk about that. I don't think that is relevant to our current student body. It's certainly not relevant to our young music educators. You didn't live in the 70s. You don't know anything about that stuff. So, I mean, thinking about being progressive and adding things to what we offer that are relevant to the students to whom we are offering them is kind of my future vision. We have so many wonderful cultures and just ways of being in the city of Milwaukee that we need to capitalize on that and have those things be representative of the music offerings that we have. So, I mean, not that I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, I still would like to have band and orchestra and choir and sort of the more traditional kinds of ensemble classes, but why don't we have a killer guitar program? What about mariachi ensembles? We could do Latin drumming like forever in this district. We have so many possibilities of really like broad and interesting. Modern band, there's just like a lot of new stuff out there that I think should be part of what is offered in this district that right now it's kind of a hard sell. Like I think the traditional and the way that things always were is appealing to people because it's simple and they understand it. But part of the process that I'll be undertaking along with the other team of people that are in this office is helping to broaden people's horizons and show them that all of these options are possible for our students as we move forward.
I have a quick question. Of all these new music teachers that you've brought in, how many of them come from the Milwaukee area or even like MPS alumni? Do you know by chance?
We have 5 MPS alumni. So in the last year, we brought 5 teachers in that went through the system, went away to college, came back to the system. And then that would mean that there's 49 teachers who didn't do that. And I would say that they are maybe 40% from the local and surrounding area. And then many of them are from somewhere else. Of the people, so I conducted interviews for our paired positions just in the last couple of weeks at schools that are sharing a teacher. So 1 teacher, but in 2 schools. And I had 15 interviews and 11 of them were from somewhere else. Illinois, a couple people from North Carolina. They're coming in from all over the place. And I think largely due to things like the Milwaukee Music Educators Association, who are advertising what's happening in Milwaukee and the growth and the possibilities of what we're doing here. So obviously we're really excited to grow our own people, right? We bring people through this system, we bring them back into the system. That's really exciting to me, but it's not the only thing we want to do. We do want to have fresh ideas and people from other places. And I mean, all of that is what makes a well-rounded district. So I think those are kind of equally important at this point.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions before we wrap up pretty soon? No? All right, can we all give a big round of applause and thank you for Ms. Garcia?
You're most welcome. It was my pleasure to meet with you today.
Thank you so much.
I'll be seeing you all on my screen in an interview very soon.
Thank you everyone for coming. We had a great turnout today and so grateful for that, and to have this wonderful guest speaker. So yeah, thank you for coming. Have a great day, everybody.
If you think of anything in the meantime, you can always reach me via Dr. Faye Shaw. I'd be happy to answer any email questions or even call me on the phone if you want to do that. I'm delighted to talk to you if you'd like to talk.
Thank you. And thank you for thank you for proctoring, Sarah, and taking the lead on this. Everybody enjoy your spring break.
Yay. All right. Bye, guys. Nice to see you all.
Bye.